where real stories stir deep emotions. Today, we uncover a shocking tale. A wife disables security cameras to cheat while her husband is away on business. Let's dive into this true-life account. I've been with Carmen for 18 years, nearly 2 decades filled with memories, dinners, and holidays. But lately, things fell off. My job as a cybersecurity expert requires frequent travel, often leaving our home in Carmen's care. That's when I noticed something strange. Our security system would mysteriously go offline for hours. When I asked Carmen about it, she acted clueless, blaming possible power outages. But something didn't sit right with me. So I did some digging. I reached out to a neighbor, a friendly guy who's always aware of what's happening around the neighborhood. He confirmed there hadn't been any power outages recently. I already suspected that, but I wanted outside confirmation. Instead of confronting Carmen, I decided to gather more evidence. A pattern was forming, and I needed to see the full picture. On my next trip, I took action. While Carmen was out for a spa day, I installed additional hidden cameras, both indoors and outdoors. They were placed discreetly, unnoticed by an untrained eye. This was my chance to find out what was really happening in my absence. A week later, another business trip came up. As expected, the security system went offline at its usual time. But this time I was prepared. The hidden indoor cameras captured everything. Carmen was deliberately turning off the security system. And that's when he arrived. Just before midnight, he would enter the house. He always left before dawn, right before Carmen reactivated the cameras. It was a gut-wrenching betrayal. Everything we built over the years shattered in an instant. But instead of confronting her, I made my move in silence. I contacted an attorney and initiated divorce proceedings. I needed to handle this with precision for my own peace of mind. Carmen left to visit her parents for a few days. That's when I packed my belongings and moved out temporarily. I wasn't abandoning my home. I just couldn't bear to share a space with someone who had betrayed me so deeply. When she returned, she was confused. She kept asking questions, trying to understand what was happening. My response was simple: "You'll find out soon enough." And she did. The day Carmen was served divorce papers at her workplace, where she was a branch manager at a bank, must have been a shock. I could imagine her face, the confusion turning into realization. During the divorce hearings, her lawyer tried to paint me as a neglectful husband. But the evidence spoke for itself. The judge saw through the deception. It was game over for Carmen. After the divorce, she attempted to apologize, but I wasn't interested. The betrayal was too deep. The wound was still fresh. I exposed her actions to our circle of friends. Some might call it petty, but for me, it was closure. Her request for alimony was denied. The judge discovered she had been misusing our savings, spending money on lavish dinners and gifts for her affair. It was just another layer of betrayal. Financial transparency in divorce is crucial, and everything came to light. In the end, the only thing Carmen received was half the proceeds from the sale of our house, a small price to pay for my peace of mind and freedom. I never found out who the other man was. He was careful, always wearing a hoodie, always keeping his back to the camera. Whoever he was, he covered his tracks well. After the divorce, I focused on rebuilding myself. I started exercising, taking care of my body and mind. Early morning runs became my therapy, giving me the clarity I needed to move forward. 3 months later, I ran into Carmen at the grocery store. She tapped me on the shoulder, eager to talk. I had nothing to say to her. She insisted. I refused. She pleaded again, so I gave her 1 minute. She claimed she was lonely, that she hadn't been thinking clearly, that her friends had influenced her. I shook my head and walked away. A few days later, I changed my number. I wanted no further contact. I was still angry, still hurt. I buried myself in work, still traveling often. Even met a couple of women along the way. Then one day, I returned from a trip to find a package at my doorstep, an unmarked envelope. Inside was an SD card and a note from Carmen. I froze. How did she get my address? Hesitant, I used an old computer to view the SD card, fearing it might contain a virus. It was a video, Carmen taking selfies in lingerie, telling me she missed me. I deleted everything. What made her think I would ever take her back? I considered calling her, telling her to stop, but that would mean giving her my new number. Instead, I ignored her. A month later, she showed up at my office. When she saw me, she stood up, desperate. I raised my hand. "No. Get out," she pleaded. I repeated myself. She left, but not before giving me the coldest look I had ever seen. That's when the security guard pulled me aside. "Man, you need to take some precautions with that woman," he warned. Turns out Carmen had been coming around a lot, sitting in the parking lot for hours, waiting for me. Didn't she have a job? That wasn't the last of her. One night, at 3:16 a.m., she knocked on my door. Now I was getting worried. This wasn't the Carmen I had known. I told her to leave. Instead, she screamed, "Forget you," and hurled a brick through my window. That was the final straw. I called the police and filed a report. A few hours later, I went to the station to request a restraining order. I was granted a temporary one. For 2 months, there was silence. No calls, no visits. Then one day, I got a call from my office security. It wasn't Carmen this time. It was her friend. She looked concerned. She told me Carmen had gone off the deep end. She pulled out her phone and showed me a series of text messages from Carmen, obsessive messages, promising she wouldn't stop until she got me back. That was all I needed to hear. That night, I upgraded my security system, installed new cameras, and reinforced my home's defenses. And that's where I am now. If you enjoyed this story and want more tales of love, betrayal, and healing, don't forget to subscribe.